Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk with you about Carl Rogers' theory of personality, or it's also considered his theory of self. It's the same thing. You're going to read about it in your textbook in the chapter on personality, and I'm not going to give you a whole history of Carl Rogers and how he got to where he was and his history. You can read that in your textbook. What I'm going to do here is try to break down a little bit and help you understand his theory of personality and his idea of the self. So as you can see on the slide in front of us here, we have incongruence on the left and congruence on the right. In incongruence, we have three circles that don't match up, so they're not congruent. And in congruence, we have all three layered one on top of the other, which looks like one circle. So to begin with, Rogers' idea of the self is it's a reified concept. That means it's like a concept that is created to the point where we think of it as a real thing, like a self. When I say, yourself, that's not a thing. It's reified. It's we think of it as a thing. Anyway, I'm just going to move on. So he thought of three aspects of the self. I'm going to tell you what they are, then I'm going to explain them, then I'm going to give you some examples. So we have the ideal self, the true self, and the self-image. The true self is who I really am. That's the given. That's theoretically, it's more or less objective. The ideal self is what I always wish to be, what I strive for, what would be my ideal for myself. And the self-image is how I perceive myself, basically my self-esteem. Okay. And by the way, the whole idea of self-esteem, the whole concept of how important it is to us comes from Rogers. So we have our three aspects of the self. I'm going to give you an example of how they interact. And I'm going to use height as an example. So let's say my true self, me, Joanne, I am 5'2". Let's say the ideal height in our culture for a woman, to be perfect, to be beautiful, whatever, is 5'10". I know that seems really tall to some. Let's just, for the sake of this example. So my true self is 5'2". The ideal for the culture is 5'10". The ideal self that Rogers talks about is typically something that we integrate from the culture. The culture tells us what is beautiful, what is right. And when I say culture, it doesn't have to be the broader culture. It could be your parents, it could be friends, it could be school, it could be the greater culture of YouTube and MTV or whatever. Make sense? So the ideal self is dictated to us kind of from the outside. And we kind of swallow it. It becomes ours. So my ideal self is to be 5'10". My true self is 5'2". As you can imagine, my self-image is not going to be great. My self-image is basically measured by the distance between these two. If my true self is over here at 5'2", my ideal self is all the way over here, I'm not meeting my ideal self. And that means that my self-image is going to be poor. So you might ask yourself, well, what should I do? Should I wear 8-inch tall heels? That might be a challenge, especially to somebody who's used to wearing, walking shoes. So 8-inch heels, that's one choice. Another choice is, some kind of bizarre cosmetic surgery where I could have my legs broken and inserts put in. And when you think of some of the extremes of cosmetic surgery that people go to, it kind of makes, it doesn't seem that far-fetched. It should, but it doesn't. So I could take some drastic measures and make myself very, very uncomfortable in order to achieve my ideal self. Or I could do what Rogers says, what Rogers suggests, which is accept and love yourself for who you are. So the goal here is to accept the true self and to love the true self as it is. So if my true self is 5'2", then 5'2" is also my ideal because it's my truth. It's the real me. And if I am 5'2" and my ideal is 5'2", then my self-image is going to be fine. I'm going to like myself and esteem myself, love myself, appreciate myself exactly as I am. And that's where we see congruence on the right, where the true self is the ideal self, and therefore the self-image is positive. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to follow this up with another video, but I'm going to stop this one right now. Okay.